Welcome to Sidebar Cafe, A Taste of Success. My name is Cindy Lopez, and I am the founder of LEAP, Legal Education Access Pipeline. Really looking forward to this conversation with Frankie and Jamie. He's making me call him Jamie, but many of you probably call him Dr. Binnall. Or Frankie, you might call him something else.
I call him Doctor. I mean, what else would I call him?
That's right, Doc.
You do not. Oh, Tiffany's here. Isn't that that's your friend, recruiter and public defender? Welcome, Tiffany. So I am, like I said, I founded Legal Education Access Pipeline. We are a diversity pipeline for underrepresented students to help them navigate the law school application process. And the reason why I founded it, I'm a first generation law student and lawyer. When I applied to law school, I do not know how I got into Loyola. No one helped me. No one read my personal statement. I knew no lawyers. There were no lawyers in my family. So I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And I thought it would be great to help students and especially to diversify our profession. And even though we live in California, which is by far the most diverse state when it comes to lawyers, we're still woefully, the diversity is pretty bad. I was a career deputy attorney general, so it's kind of ironic that a prosecutor is talking to these two gentlemen. But I prosecuted doctors for most of my career, so I was one of those people that helped protect consumers from bad doctors. I kind of had an expertise in sexual misconduct cases, so the medical board does not look favorably upon doctors who have sex with their patients. So I did a lot of those kind of cases and revoked a lot of doctors, and it was very rewarding. And then at a very young age, I was able to retire last year and start LEAP. And we are just finishing our first cohort. And I know I have some LEAP fellows on here. I adore them. They're about to take the LSAT, which is a huge step towards law school. And we are taking applications, and I'll talk about this a little bit later for our second cohort. Let me ask both of you just briefly to talk about, and Frankie, we'll start with you, your education.
Yeah, well, I'll just say I am, through college, I was considered a non-traditional student, but, essentially I went to public schools in Oxnard, California, up until high school. I spent 1 year in high school before I was expelled the first month of junior year I was accused of battery and was coerced by the campus cop, the SRO, into confessing to something that I didn't do. He threatened to beat me essentially. And so I confessed as a 15-year-old kid to something that I thought would result in being suspended. And instead I was expelled from the district. And within 2 weeks of that, having been humiliated, I would say, and having not a lot of structure out of school, I ended up connecting with one of my lifelong friends, teenager as well as myself, and we thought up the great idea of committing an armed robbery. And I got sentenced to DJJ, and so I completed my education there in CYA back then. So in CYA, I actually earned 2 high school diplomas because they didn't offer college. But when I got out, I started at community college, Oxnard Community College. Did some college inside of prison when I violated parole. I went to YTS, and so I studied a few classes there. But ultimately, when I got out, I had enough credits to transfer. I was age 25, and I transferred to UC Berkeley. Got my BA in English. Spent a few years out of college working for the National Center for Youth Law, and decided to go to law school, knowing that I had a criminal history and maybe not the best education. I applied to law school, and I applied to 31 law schools to try to overcompensate for what I perceived were my deficiencies. And ultimately, I was admitted to UCLA amongst others. And so really feeling like law school, as far as everything I knew, would be stressful and alienating. I wanted to go to a law school where I was understood. At that time, I still had a goatee and, rocked the white t-shirts, my Dallas Cowboys hat, and, wore long socks with my shorts.
Pretty.
I didn't want to go to, for example, to an East Coast school where I had to explain who I was or had to be burdened with having to educate people about my life and my background. And I felt like at UCLA, I was well understood, I was accepted, and I was able to focus on my education there selfishly. And that happened. So, a little plug, I will admit, I believe that law school for me, and in particular law school at UCLA, were the 3 best years of my life.
Okay. And Jamie,
Yeah,
education.
so I grew up on the East Coast in a town called Charlestown. It was featured in the movie The Town. Was there till I was a kid, 4th, 5th grade. Then we moved out into the suburbs. My dad was a construction worker. My mom was a first grade teacher. I had the opportunity to go to a independent school to wrestle. They were given some scholarship kind of things. And so I did that. Graduated, went to Gettysburg College down in Pennsylvania on a wrestling scholarship, and was there for 4 years and graduated. And the first year out, I was a wrestling coach in New York City, a place called Wagner College. And that's when I had my DUI wreck. I had gone down from New York to Philadelphia, hang out with a good friend, went to a bar, did what we did, and then on the way home, wrecked the car and he got killed. So I bailed out, and my grandmother actually mortgaged her house for me. Bailed out and stayed out for a year, finished up school, got fired as a wrestling coach, finished up school at Wagner, and then went in. I was sentenced to 3.5 to 7, ended up serving just a little over 4. About a year and a half in, really didn't know what I was going to do, and petitioned the warden at the time to take my LSATs while I was inside. So they hadn't done it in the Pennsylvania system before, so it was kind of a new ask, and I wasn't sure I was going to get it, but they ultimately said yes. And in October, I went in 2000, October 01, I took it in my cell and applied to law schools from there, thinking that it would help me with the parole board. Sent off, I think, 11 applications, got into 10 or 9, but only one school of all the ones I got into would let me start while I was on active state parole. And I was going to have, if I had made my minimum, which I didn't, but if I had, I was going to have around 3 years to walk off. So the only school that would let me start right away was a little school down in San Diego, Thomas Jefferson School of Law. And I took the acceptance. I mean, I really didn't have a choice. I felt like I was behind and I wanted to get going. And so when I got out, paroled to Boston, lived with my folks for 6 months, and then I transferred all my paper out to San Diego and walked off the rest of it down there. So then I was there and ended up stacking a bunch of other degrees on top of it because I wanted to become a professor. So what followed was an LLM degree at Georgetown, 1-year graduate law degree, and then a PhD back at UCI in criminology.
First of all, your stories are amazing, but I know they're going to get even more interesting. So Frankie, you touched on it a little bit. You said that when you were about 15, you and your friend decided to, I think you said rob a store. So can you just kind of go into a little bit more detail, what happened following that?
Following the robbery?
Right.
So, my friend and I, I was 15, he was 16. The reason why, I mean, not to justify, but, him and his family, we were all poor. His family was going to get evicted. He invites me to go with him and watch his back, so to speak, to do an armed robbery. I thought differently. I was like, nah, that's a stupid idea. If we get caught, we're going to do years and robbing a liquor store. What are you going to get, like $300? Well, I told him no initially. He accepted my no. He walks away. I feel guilty. All like the codependency, all the thoughts I felt guilty. Like, what if something happens to my homie? Like, I'm gonna feel so bad and terrible. So I'm like, hold up, I'll go with you. We rob the liquor store, broad daylight on a Saturday. It was noon. We get arrested shortly thereafter. We did get away with the money. We're booked into Ventura County Juvenile Hall. And, one thing that I can say is, like we get there, immediately, I saw like the disparities. Most of the people in there looked like me. There was one instance where there were 2 white girls who robbed a pizza parlor with a .45 caliber handgun, spent 2 weeks in juvenile hall, and were released on probation. Meanwhile, I was expecting to get something similar, and the juvenile hall guards kept reminding me, this is Ventura County. and we're very racist and sexist. You are a brown boy. Don't expect the same result. And, and so going through that process, we spent 8
Wait,
months.
did they say that?
Fuck yeah. These are correctional officers. Like, why wouldn't they? And there were white women that were saying it. And
Were
so
they warned, like, was it a warning or like, just, dude, you got to know that this is what's going to happen to you?
the latter, because spending 8 months in juvenile hall, like you build some rapport with the guards that are, they call themselves something else, but I'm calling them guards. And I get, the conversation was kind of like, oh, if they got that, I can't wait to go to have my day in court because, I want to move on from this. And they say, temper your expectations. This is Ventura County. You are who you are. Don't expect the same result.
So Jamie, I know you touched a little bit on what happened with you in terms of your criminal background, but can you go into a little bit more detail, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I mean, we, I was out with a friend and went to a bar and got drunk and tried to drive home and wrecked the car and was convicted. We hit a Mack truck head on and was convicted of a DUI aggravated assault on the driver, who ultimately wasn't hurt, but that was part of the charge. And then DUI homicide for my friend sitting next to me. In Pennsylvania at the time, they did not have a manslaughter charge, so it was a DUI homicide. I was sentenced to 3 to 6 mandatory min on the homicide and 6 to 12 months on the aggravated assault, running wild. Come to find out, it really wasn't a mandatory minimum, but that's what the judge should have said when he sentenced me. And then I went in, that day and spent, 3 months in county. Then I went to Graterford, which is right outside Philadelphia. They recently closed it. Spent 6 or 8 months there. On a hold, for classification. And then I went to the flagship prison in Pennsylvania for the rest of my bit, which was Camp Hill.
So if I'm someone listening in and I have no idea, before this, I had no idea about your backgrounds, right? And now I'm listening to you. I know that both of you are lawyers. I know that Jamie, you have just way too many degrees. And I'm thinking to myself, how in the hell did both of these gentlemen, and I'm using gentlemen loosely, how did they go from being incarcerated to really being, you're both experts in your field, and we're gonna get to that, what your expertise is, but for people who are on this webinar who might have a similar background or who know people who have been previously incarcerated and think they want to go to law school, what was it inside of you that made you want to go to law school? And Frankie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, so I'll be honest. I don't think that I ever set on a path to become an attorney. To be honest, I didn't know any attorneys growing up. I knew very few college graduates growing up, and the only attorneys that I knew were the prosecutor and my defender in the courtroom. And I'll also share, when I was young, my older brother was, when I was 5 and he was 16, was arrested for the crime of murder. My mom, believing that public defenders aren't good lawyers, I think, which is pretty a widespread
misnomer.
Just kind of lie. She hired a private attorney, and that private attorney was pretty scandalous and shady, and ultimately did nothing for my brother, but did take my mom's house that she put a lien on. And as a result, we lost my brother and we became homeless. And I had a very negative experience of attorneys, and beginning with that, and then my own experiences, and so I never considered it. But I think having had the experience in the juvenile justice system be so negative and unfair and racially biased, I think as a young person, fairness is something that you can feel and in a kind of visceral way pretty acutely. And I understood the fairness of it all, and it kind of made me angry and bitter, and for many years, in the first few years of my incarceration, I blamed the racist judge, and I blamed everybody besides myself. And I think at some point I came to terms with the fact that I did something wrong, and regardless of whether I thought the response or the consequences were overdone, I put myself in that position. And I really adopted this philosophy about, like life is 10% what happens and 90% how you respond to it. And I refuse to just give up and accept that life is fair and be that crabby, shitty fucking attitude person. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do about it? And, and I wanted to change the systems, because of the unfairness. And so I decided to think about better uses for my anger and for my, I think my personality is such that, I'm a little bit combative and adversarial and,
What? Oh, no. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. So I'll say like, the good answer, which is true, is like, I wanted to fight for people that were just like me. Like, in my community, when I got out the third time, I was 21 years old. I decided I wanted to travel the path less traveled and go to community college, even though I knew no one that had gone to community college. But I understood two things. There's financial aid and they'll give me free money, and there's girls there. And so for the free money and for, being around, young women, I went. And I'm happy to admit that, although I went for the wrong reasons, it didn't matter. I got my ass on campus and the rest kind of took hold. I found mentors. I found a safe space where I could, drop my guard and internalize, the quality services and be supported by authentic messengers and mentors. And that trifecta of safe spaces, quality services, and authentic messengers, people, is what made all the difference. And over time, they helped me believe in me when I didn't have any self-esteem or any positive self-concept.
So Jamie, I don't know if you remember the question, but for people who are on this webinar and who didn't know your background, they're here, they've just heard, that you were in prison, and that you are now an attorney. You are well, actually, maybe they don't know this. You're an attorney, you're a professor, you're tenured. So you have lots of degrees. So what was it? Was there something about your incarceration that led you to become an attorney? Like what was it for you that led you to go to law school?
So when I was a student prior to probably all through high school, undergrad, I really wasn't a good student at all. I graduated with a GPA that I'm embarrassed to talk about from my undergrad, and probably an even lower one from high school. When I got to prison, I was there about 6 months, a year. And after the petronoia wore off, and I was dug in and the boredom kind of set in, and realizing that I was looking at, another 3 years at least, I just sat and thought one day, and I can remember the moment. I can remember the block actually. But I sat, my cellie was gone, he'd gone somewhere, a gym or a pass or something. And I remember thinking to myself, what the hell am I gonna do when I get out of here? I'd always just wanted to be a teacher and a coach like my mom, and that was out the window. And I remember thinking how selfish and immature I was, that I had two parents that were together who didn't have a lot of money, but spent a whole lot on their two kids, me and my brother. And I had just squandered that opportunity and the things that I was given, and that I was just going to be, essentially a nothing from here on out, because I didn't see a way out of it. So the first order of business was convincing the parole board to let me out. And at the time, they weren't letting a lot of people out. And so I thought, okay, how can I do this? Well, I always heard about, they respect school and all this stuff. So maybe I'll figure out something I can do school-wise that will impress them enough so that they kind of will have to let me out. And I wrote a letter to a group back in the day called the Ex-Felons Bar Association in New York City. And a guy answered me right away. And he said, you can do this. Here are the states you should go to. And California was one, New York was one, Massachusetts, my home state, was one. He said, and these are the ones to stay away from, which are the usual suspects, right? Arizona, Texas, Florida. And I said, okay, so now I was singularly focused on, I was going to do this first to get myself out of prison. And then who knows, maybe I'll be good at it. But I really didn't have a lot of hope that I was going to be a lawyer, or that I was really even going to finish law school. This was just a way out the door for me at the beginning. And unlike Frankie, I think I certainly didn't want to do criminal law or having anything resembling it. This was to get out of prison, and then to, if everything hit perfectly, have a job that I could go to every day, make a little scratch and support a family. And that was all I cared about. I didn't want anything to do with the criminal justice system anymore. I was tired. I was over it. And so that's how my kind of law school career started.
And so now, just to back up, now what today my job is writing laws. So policy advocacy, I write laws with the legislature, with the help of communities, impacted, communities, formerly incarcerated youth. We identify issues, we write the law, we work with the legislator to lobby and pass the law. And then once it's passed, I work with state and local agencies, depending on, whose area those statutes or reforms fall into, and help implement them with the very same people, bringing community groups to the table. And not only that, but it's, my work is also very much like community power building, doing a lot of, building up young people, formerly incarcerated people to believe that they can become lawyers or whatever they want to do. We don't all have to be attorneys, but the idea is we all have something to contribute. Our criminal histories shouldn't determine that. And if I'm here and I was able to get through the door, then I'm trying to break that door wide open and not close it behind me, to make sure
That's right.
that more people can come behind me. Because I'll tell you, the first few years as an attorney were very lonely. There were no other formerly incarcerated attorneys that I was aware of. People were aghast. They're like, wait, you just said you were formerly incarcerated and you also said you're an attorney. Like, how did that happen? Why would they let you? I got a lot of these questions that were disrespectful, but in the end, I'm just like, look, it's my job to humanize who we are, make them feel differently. I felt the responsibility to be a better person for the sake of people coming behind me. And then I met Jamie, and we've been working now together to try to create a pipeline.
Jamie, one of the things I know that you do, so besides that you are a teacher, a professor and tenured, which is awesome, is you represent formerly incarcerated clients who are in law school, who want to take the bar, but they have the moral character issue. So can you talk a little bit about what you're doing with that? And before, I don't want to forget this. So Frankie, I think I've told you about Ruben. Ruben is one of the LEAP fellows, and he was formerly incarcerated, wrongfully convicted. He was exonerated. And so he wants to connect with you. And I know he's connected with Jamie. So I want to make sure it's okay to
absolutely
to share your email. But so Jamie, can you talk a little bit about your work helping people if they have these moral character issues?
Yeah, so I was barred in 2008 December. And
oh my gosh, during the recession, wow.
Yeah, and I immediately went back to school to do an LLM, and then I started being a graduate student at Irvine. And basically, to get some practice experience and to make a little money, I started doing appeals, federal criminal appeals down in San Diego, so I could stay at home and write the appeal and do contract work. Mm-hmm. And someone approached me, now a good friend, and asked me, hey, you went through this process with a felony conviction. Can you give me a hand? A serious criminal conviction, serious time, decades worth. And I was sort of a newbie and thought there's no way, but sure, I'll help you out. And so I did, got this person in. We were all excited. And I thought, when he came to me, he had gone to a whole bunch of other people and everyone said they couldn't help him. And I thought, well, I can help these folks, and, why not give it a shot? And so I started doing that work. I stopped doing appeals and I started doing moral character and fitness determination applications exclusively. And I think to date, I got an email yesterday that someone I represented had just gotten cleared. I think to date, we're looking at, for formerly incarcerated people, probably anywhere between 30 and 50 that are now attorneys, probably closer to 30, 35. And then obviously a number of people with convictions who didn't do any time. So sort of, two sides to that. So yeah, I've been doing that for about 13 years at this point. Mm-hmm. And it's a great practice. It's opened my eyes a lot. The state bar has changed multiple times over since I started doing it. I think now they're far more receptive to people with criminal records and have made changes that help us out, in terms of my side with the client. And I'm excited about it. And we've had good results these last few years, and I hope it just keeps going in that direction.
So I know both of you, because I want to wind out because there's a couple of questions. Both of you have started the California, I think it's California System I'm going to say
Involved.
involved bar association. So Jamie, can you talk a little bit about how you started it and why?
Yeah, we were invited to, Frankie and I were both invited to, excuse me, I was reading a question. Frankie and I were invited to a roundtable at Stanford Law School, hosted by Debbie Mukamal and the Stanford Criminal Justice Center, Bob Weisberg. And it was a convening of folks to talk about formerly incarcerated people getting into the bar, right? Going to law school and getting into the bar. How can we facilitate that? What are the barriers? And what does change in policy look like to facilitate that? And we had this convening. Debbie Mukamal has done some great work on that, did a report. And from that, this sort of idea came about, why don't we just start a bar or association for the folks that we all know, and that we had always had an informal network of people. I told you I reached out to Frankie years ago. And so about 2 months after this convening, I called Frankie and I said, hey, is this something you'd be interested in? He's like, 100%, let's do it. And from there, we just started putting the call out and trying to see how many people we had. And the response was fantastic. We had a whole bunch of people email us right away. And so plans were in the works to do our first convening. So that was summer of 18. We decided to do our first convening in March of 19. And Frankie's alma mater, UCLA Law School, Sharon Dolovic, a criminal law professor over there that I have to give a shout out to. Frankie's good friends with her too. She helped us facilitate our first annual convening there, and we did it. We put it all together and had about 150, 160 people attend. And it was great. We had admissions professionals from a whole bunch of law schools in California. We had current law students who were all members who were formerly incarcerated or system involved. And then we had folks from the state bar, from the Chief Trial Counsel's office and from the admissions department, who were there to answer questions and talk a little bit about their perspective. So website will be up soon.
So you say.
So I say. I'm building it, so we know who the hell knows when. But we're gonna build this out. We're hoping to have a convening next year. We'll see what happens with COVID. Knock on wood. But we're moving forward, and we have a lot of folks that we're trying to help. The way we're trying to organize this is, public education, teaching folks in our population that you can 100% do this, right? To give them hope that if this is something they're interested in, it is 100% attainable. Direct services, trying to help them along the way, put them into contact with people who can help them. Maybe it's at a law school, maybe it's an attorney who can help them with moral character. And then finally, Frankie's sort of baby is the policy advocacy arm of it. How can we push the state bar and law schools to change how they view folks like us, how they assess our applications. So yeah, that's the mission. And couldn't have asked for a better partner to work on it with.
Are you talking about Frankie?
I am.
I see. There's kind of been a common theme, for sure, at least Frankie, with your story, and whatever you want to call it, it's role models, right? I know I said to you the other day, Charles Barkley famously has said years ago when he was told he was a role model, he's like, screw that, I don't want to be a role model. Well, too bad, you guys are both role models. And that's what young people need to see, right? They need to see someone who looks like them, who's been through the same experience, and can positively say to them, you can do this. I know that sounds very rah-rah, and I'm not saying it the way I wanted to, but I think that's a huge part. That's a huge part of LEAP, is for our fellows to see men and women who look like them, who have similar backgrounds, similar experience, similar socioeconomic status, whether they're of color or LGBTQ+, so that they can go, okay, this person did it, he or she paved the way, now, I can do it also. So we have here future attorneys, current attorneys, but for our future attorneys, what piece of advice would you give them?
It's the best decision I ever made, going to law school. It's a different language. It's a language that you need to know to not be taken advantage of. That's the way I looked at it. I 100% recommend them doing it. And it is 100% possible. It doesn't matter your background. There's help out there. There's people that will, you know, kind of guide you if you want it, and take advantage of those people. Send emails, call, bug them. It doesn't matter. You know, if you don't hear back, follow up. And yeah, I mean, and if that's what you want to do, then just do that. I mean, I don't think there's any reason you should.
Okay, Frankie? Dude, you're muted.
I know I am. Thank you. I'm in a room with other people. Please be patient, Cindy. So what I would say is, you know, I think if you're gonna go to law school, I mean, it was the right decision for me. And I have to just say, I've met many people who are thinking about law school or went to law school who shared with me that they were told by somebody, an attorney, don't go to law school. Law school's terrible.
Exactly.
And what I tell them is, you know, tell that person to shut the fuck up and eat shit, right? Because
Yeah.
I would never discourage somebody from doing something as important as that, you know. But I think that it's important that you know why you want to go to law school, because my experience in law school was it was academic hazing. Like it's an artificial environment. Every professor thinks that their one class is the most important. They give you a lot of readings. They grade you hard, and the truth is none of that fucking matters, because as you're in school, there's people out on the street dying of poverty, of police shootings, of just all types of stuff. And if you can't connect your education, you know, real life struggle, then you're probably going to suffer. I remember, you know, my time in law school, I'm seeing people crying in the library, you know, coming undone at the seams. And I'm just like laughing, not laughing at them, but I'm internally. And I remember in my first year of law school, a lot of my friends were coming to me and saying, Frankie, how do you do it? And I'm like, do what? And they're like, how do you stay so calm? Like, I'm just stressed out over here. And I'm like, bro, like, you act like, you know, this is the worst thing that ever happened to you, because for many of you, it is the worst thing that ever happened to you. Not for me. Like, no one's going to shoot me, stab me, try to kill me, you know, hurt someone that I love, take my home, make me homeless. Like, none of that. The worst thing that's going to happen to me is a C minus. And I was okay with that. It was a safe environment. And there were times when I felt like very removed from reality and I was burnt out. I would ditch class for days, sometimes even a whole week. And I'm proud to say it, because it was what I needed for mental health. And I would go volunteer at the Office of Education and present at, you know, these classrooms where these kids who have no hope. And it reminded me of me, like I saw myself in them, and it helped me reset. And when I came back to school, I was just in a better place with, you know, perspective wise, and I was able to deal with the stress better, because I realized this is not the only thing happening in life. Like, you know, so, you know, to answer your question, you know, I think that if you want to go to law school, you should definitely do that, but know why. Because if you're convinced that this is connected to something very real that you value, it's a solution to a very, you know, relevant problem to you, then that's going to give you strength in these ups and downs that will invariably occur in law school. Like, you're going to have hard times. I did get that C minus, and it didn't demoralize me. I'm like, I passed. And in the end, I passed the bar on the first try. And and I also add that last year I was named the top 70 alumni of UCLA in the 70 years that it's been in existence. So I was the top
Awesome.
70 and 70, and, you know, I wasn't even 40 yet, you know. And so I feel like I am probably one of the more successful attorneys in my class or in the time that I was there.
I agree with you, Frankie. If someone came to me and said, should I go to law school? I've never told someone I don't like being a lawyer. I hate the term I'm a recovering lawyer. I like doing, I hate that term. I really, just like you, I really liked doing what I did, because I know that I was protecting consumers. I like your answer about know your why, because law school, there's going to be so many ups and downs. And if you don't have a strong why, if you're going to law school just to make money, I'm not sure that that's a good enough why. You need to have a very deep why. I also want to give props to Jamie, because you took the LSAT in prison. So we have students now, our students are about to take the LSAT, and they're worried about all sorts of things, and you freaking took it in prison. So that is amazing. I don't think no one can complain right now about COVID or about taking the LSAT at home where there's a lot of noise or whatever. You took it in prison. So that is, I love that. I want to just do, because we're going to end now, and you're welcome for inviting you. So if you're interested in applying to LEAP, please email me. We are about to take applications for our second cohort. It's going to be ridiculously competitive because our current LEAP fellows are great ambassadors. So they've told a lot of their friends about LEAP, but we need you. Those of you who are on this webinar, you want to go to law school, we need you. Whatever you want to do in law, we need you. We need diverse people. So thank you, Jamie and Frankie. Thank you so much. I knew this was going to be super interesting. Normally we can do like those goofy little reactions where there's a clapping thing when we're on a Zoom meeting, but because we're on a webinar, people can just say, see, they're saying great panel. Wow. People are doing the clapping thing. So thank you very much. And thank you to everybody. I hope it was interesting. I'm not going to say go Dodgers. Yes, I am. Go Dodgers. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just want to say thank you to everybody who joined the panel and your great questions. And, I'll just say, do what you think is right, and just know that the struggle, you don't have to suffer alone. There are people out here like, everyone, Jamie and Cindy and myself who are available to help. And so you don't have to suffer alone, and there's people who've done it, and we're happy to share what we can to make your experience better.
Yeah.
And I will put up the website, or excuse me, the email for us. Hit us up if you are system involved and you want someone to talk to, you want some help. Get involved in our community. Website will be done soon, I promise, and I will send it around to anyone who's interested. It was great being here. Thank you for attending.
All right. Thank you. Good night, everybody.